Welcome to MamaFuel, the podcast that fuels every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully sparks a few dreams along the way. I'm Anne Ferguson, Chief Nurturer and Mama Mentor at the Centered Mama Project, and your host for this podcast. I'll be sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with beautiful mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of being a gorgeous woman shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. Let's get started. Hi there. Welcome to today's episode of MamaFuel. This episode is particularly special to me because in it I share a conversation with a woman who over time has essentially become our family's angel. Her name is Leslie Potter. She's a mama of a beautiful daughter that she adopted many, many years ago. She's been raising her on her own, and she's also a parenting coach. And I came to Leslie 6 years ago at time of recording, during a time when I was struggling with certain parts of parenting and of my own behavior that had surprised me. Leslie is incredibly compassionate, wise, humble, warm, and her love and understanding and kindness have been such an incredible model to me and to my girls, and has done more for our relationships and our family overall than pretty much any other encounter I've had. I could go on about Leslie, but I think the most important and impactful thing is for us to just get started with this conversation. I'd love to know what you think about it. So when it's all over, let me know in the comments. Hi, and welcome, Leslie. I am so grateful that you have agreed to join us today and to share your life experience, your woman experience, your mother experience with everyone who's got us in their earbuds today. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Miss Anne. Always happy to talk with you, of course.
It's so fun to talk with you. And I've told everyone listening that I am indebted to you always because you are our family's angel. And we know each other very, very well. So it's important for me that everyone knows that. And I'm particularly excited to bring your wisdom and your rich experience and the realness with which you speak of your experience of becoming a mama into this realm and to share it with anyone who's listening. So why don't we start there? Because your journey to motherhood hasn't been as traditional maybe as, the 2.4 children in the White House with the picket fence and the whole. Tell us about that.
Well, I always wanted to be a mama. I did know that from the time I was a young girl, but I had a very, shall I say, uncomfortable and distressful childhood. I would say dysfunctional, that's the word they use, but it was a really difficult childhood. So I made a commitment that I was going to do a lot of work on myself, and I was going to do my spiritual work and all of this, and before I ever decided to be a mother. And time kept going on, and I kept going different paths. I was a wild bohemian in New York. I was an actress. I was a singer. I was doing just about everything I could to stay away from this deep, deep desire to be a mother. So I also had lots of fear of rejection. So I pretty well organized my life not to feel rejection. So I never got married, even though, again, I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a family and children. It just wasn't in the cards. So I woke up about, I would say around 42, I woke up and I went, oh my God, I'm not going to be a mother. It was like, no. I realized I could live without being married, but there was no way I could live without being a mother. And the call was so strong and so deep. At 44, I found myself traveling to China to adopt my daughter as a single mom. So it was one of those like huge, it wasn't a nudge, it was a push because I was kind of getting on the other end here. And but it was, when it came in, it was so incredibly strong. And that was 18 years ago. She just turned 18. So
happy birthday, Megan. Yeah. That's so exciting. I've heard your story before, but every time I hear it, I learn something new, and I just have shivers all over the place. And I know this is going to resonate with anyone whose earbuds we are
graciously being welcomed into. It was a little awkward or gracious. Anyway, we're happy to be in your earbuds when you're listening. So I would love to know, when you were in that transition, because you waited longer and because your route to becoming a mama wasn't the usual biological, I say usual, it's not usual because lots of people have, adopt children, which is amazing, but it wasn't the biologically common way of becoming a mama. So how did you find the transition into becoming, into creating your family? Because you did it with such intention and you did it with so much love and planning, right? Like you don't just adopt a beautiful human like Megan, like you go buy a quart of milk, thankfully.
Well, as I say, once I put my application in, that took forever because I told myself I didn't have enough money. I was single. I was had a horrible childhood. I mean, there were a million obstacles I had to go through. But fortunately, all those obstacles just moved out of the way. And once I put my application in, I never looked back. It was probably the most glorious year of my life, even having to get fingerprinted and have police checks. I laughed with people because I was like, who would ever want to get fingerprinted? But I was like, I'm getting a baby. I'm getting a baby. The fingerprint office, everybody's looking at me like, they don't want to be there. And I was like, I'm getting a police check today. Woohoo!
Do you want my toes as well? Have my fingers? Do you want my nose? I'll give you my nose.
Anything. So it was beautiful to realize all these things that I never thought I wanted to do when they were in context to me getting my daughter. It was glorious. I mean, so that year was spent. That was my pregnancy year. The transition, I had to do home studies. I had to do bios. I had to do pictures. So it was really like being pregnant. I really got prepared. I had a shower. I had 2 showers. My friends just totally adored me and, prepared me. So even though I wasn't literally going through a pregnancy, I was actually preparing all that time with all the paperwork and everything that had to do. I even had to wait because we got referrals, and I thought I was going to get my referral in January, and I was like the cutoff right before mine. So it was even like, pregnancy, like thinking you're going to have the baby, and then you had to wait 2 more weeks. Oh. It was so hard. And of course, I got the perfect child for me. So it was worth, my waiting time, but I had my pregnancy period. It took about 9 months from the time I actually did the paperwork until I got my referral. It took about a year before I got Megan, but it was about a 9-month period.
Oh, Ashley, thank you for sharing that. I was stumbling in asking you the question, and because any journey into motherhood is complex and beautiful and unique, and your way of expressing that it was like having a pregnancy is so true to me, that you're still preparing your home, preparing your heart, preparing your life, preparing logistics, preparing financially, preparing emotionally and spiritually to meet this little being and welcome her into your home. It's a preparation no matter how you come to it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it was like that. We're all those steps. I mean, there might be different, some of the different steps. I'm sure you didn't have to get fingerprinted or police checked.
No, I didn't.
But it was my kind of step, that was my doctor checkup maybe, right?
For sure, yeah. You had to go for some biological checking. That was it for you.
Yeah. So it was a beautiful journey. I've never been that giddy and excited, and just because I had made the decision, and it was just, I didn't really even have the money, and I was willing to put it on the credit card. I just didn't care. And I will tell this story about 6 months into the process, $15,000 literally dropped into my lap. I had no idea where it was coming from. I didn't earn it. I mean, it was just like this miracle just came, and that was exactly what I needed to adopt her and have 6 months at home. So, it was like once I made that decision, it was just like, whoosh, everything just opened.
Everything aligned.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, isn't it? When you have a knowing and you get that push, not just a gentle kind of nudge, you might want to try this, but like do this thing and, take your life in this direction. Because it's not usually, buy the white bread or the brown bread. It's usually big, move to this continent,
yes,
with this person, adopt this child. I mean, wow, what a courageous and thrilling and maybe a little bit scary journey to be on.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, because I had so many obstacles in my way, right? And so those obstacles were, challenging me to question this, especially being older, especially being single, especially not having enough money. In my family, I grew up in the South, so everybody thought I was crazy. They thought I was a wild bohemian, and I had been, right? So everybody thought I was going to be irresponsible, and this was just another one of my things that I wanted to do, and that I wasn't thinking about the child. So I just had so many barriers. And my father had grown up during the communist periods, and he thought I was going to adopt a communist. So he refused to talk to me for 6 months. So there were just so many obstacles in the way where I could have stopped and said, okay, this is too much.
Yeah.
But that energy, that knowing was so strong and it's been that way since I got her, that knowing to shift the way I parent, to be who I am. It's just like this, it's like a force of nature.
Well, as is she, right? She is also a force of nature.
She is a force of nature.
Megan is
we called her the Empress from the first time I saw her picture. I was like, oh, okay.
She is no shrinking wallflower, Megan, and she's just exquisite. And for anyone, we'll share where to find Leslie later, but for anyone who goes onto Leslie's site, you can see pictures of Megan, and she's just, aside from being breathtaking in her pictures, she's also breathtaking in personality and in what I know of her choices. She is just amazing. And a lot of that, I imagine, is due to the choices that you made in how you decided to parent her. And your journey towards parenting was also not traditional, was also not what you had grown up with, which it sounds like that was a good thing because your childhood was so traumatic. But can you talk to us a little bit about, and I know parts of this story, but every time we talk about it, there's always new layers to uncover and new things to learn and new richness to be had. So I'm asking this question with some foreknowledge, but knowing that there's such goodness here, tell us a little bit about how you evolved both as a woman, because you were a woman without the mother label and role for 42 years of your life, which is a good amount of time. It's a good run, And so how did you evolve relative to yourself? How did you relate to yourself? And how did that affect how you were parenting?
Well, I'll never forget when I brought Megan home. I thought, again, I had my fantasy like everybody else. This was going to be so wonderful and fabulous. And I will never forget when I would put her down for a nap, and I would look at the clock, and I would go, "Oh my God, she's going to wake up in half an hour, and I've got to find 4 more hours. What do I do?" I mean, it was so challenging. I said I did more laundry in the first week than I think I'd done in the last year. Right? I was so stretched, even though I was ready for it. But I would just like, oh my God, she'll go to sleep in another hour, because it was just so foreign to my lifestyle and what I had done.
Yeah.
And I laugh. I say, well, like 3 years later, the opposite happened. She would be away, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself, because I'd have 4 hours to myself, and I'd go, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
But it was a huge wake up, like, wow, it just was such a radical shift of my lifestyle, because I didn't have a newborn. She was 9 months old when I got her. She was 12 pounds, 10 ounces. So she was very tiny and malnourished, but she wasn't a newborn. So it was kind of like coming in like, wow, to full on, being awake a lot, even though she slept.
Yes.
Right?
And not just because of the jet lag.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say it took a good 6 months for me to find a new rhythm. to start to feel my way into who I was. And I was very determined. I, was an attachment parent. I was making all her food. I mean, I was just like, I was going to give this child the experience that I never had.
You were going to tick all the boxes and be the model mama as you saw it.
Totally. I mean, because I could, I had all this energy and this time, and that was really fine for a while. I was meeting all of her needs on demand, and I was taking care of everything until finally, by the time she was 3 or 4, she was feeling so engulfed by my need to take care of her and not to take care of me, that this was when my parenting started to shift, because a lot of rage entered our home at that point. And she was the one that was raging, but over time, as I began to explore, I think it was actually my own internal rage of how I had abandoned myself so much and left myself so much, and tried to relive my childhood through my daughter. And it was a really hard year. I said I lived in a house of rage for about a year, where when I look back at it now, she was basically trying to get me off of her. I was living through her. So I kind of misinterpreted adult attachment parenting, right? Because I didn't have a really strong attachment to myself, my roots. So I was attaching to my daughter. So then I needed her to behave. I needed her to be okay. I needed her to be doing all the things, so that I could feel good about myself. So I began to realize that she needed a separate life. I'll tell this funny story about this was I think she was around 5, and she got chicken pox. Well, I knew she was going to, because we kind of all prepared for our chicken pox parties and all. Where I live in Boulder, we want the kids to have it. And I had every remedy you can imagine ready. I had sprays, I had homeopath, she was going to have the best chicken pox experience of anyone in the world, right? I was ready. And I'll never forget the day I started seeing the red dots. It was like, yes, here we go. And, every time she turned around, I was spraying her or throwing her in the bathtub. And probably about day 3, we're in the bed because we co-slept. And she wakes up in the night just riling, just, and I'm like, I got my spray, and I'm trying to spray her, and she knocks the bottle out of my hand. And I will never forget, I was so wounded. I was like, what? You don't want my sprays? And as I turned over, I went, oh my God, she wants to have her own experience of chickenpox.
Yeah.
This is not my experience. She wants to suffer. She wants to feel it. This is her experience. And that was a big wake-up moment for me, to realize that in my need to be the perfect mother, I wasn't making space for my daughter to have her own suffering and to see that she could get through it, or that she could make it through. So I
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, and also, we have so much to say. But also, one of the things that, what you had also done, and this is a term that I have learned from you, you had thrown yourself under the bus. You had, in your momentum of wanting to be this perfect mom and this exemplary human that was going to single-handedly provide for all of Megan's needs and show everyone that you could do this, and that you weren't the rebel, and that you weren't irresponsible. You were going to be uber responsible and uber responsive. And that's not sustainable in my experience.
No. And it wasn't healthy for me or for her, because she wasn't getting to have her own experience. I was so engulfed. I engulfed her experience and needed it to look good. Like when she hit the thing away, it was just like, this statement. I needed her to let me, do all of this to her. And so it was a huge moment when I started realizing I had to start separating out and really turning my energy back toward where I was attaching to myself, so I could become a safe base for her. And I think this happens with a lot of attachment parents, just because my experience is a lot of the women that I work with, because I do parent coaching, is that they are a lot like me. They maybe grew up in homes where they didn't have a safe place to attach to. They might have anxious attachment, or things might have been difficult for them. So they're always kind of like looking outside to find that safety. Mm-hmm. They never were able to establish how to be safe, how to set personal boundaries about how I treat myself, right? That was not a given for me. I wasn't able to do that as a child. So I started thinking the only way I could be safe is if I could control the external. And that meant to get my daughter to be the child that I needed her to be, so I felt safe. So I began to shift at around 4 to start going, okay, what does it mean for me to be the safe base? You know, like to be the tree and the tag, you know, when the kids play tag, when they go to the safe base, what would it mean for me to be that safe base for my child versus looking at her to be the safe base by how she behaved? That was radical.
And also, how can you be the safe base for her, but also how could you be the safe base for yourself?
Absolutely. Right? For the inner child for me.
Yeah, and what, as you're talking, something that comes to mind is this pressure, and it's something that I talk about often, this pressure that we inadvertently place on our children to provide for our every need, because we sometimes, not all of us, I know some moms who are amazing at keeping other interests going and careers and entrepreneurship and vast amounts of other things, but some moms, and this certainly happened to me in the first, I'm going to say 5 years probably of being a mom. So it's been more years, probably equal amounts of years of that as there have been of less kind of enmeshment. But that those first 5 years of pouring everything into my girls to give them everything, not single-handedly, but close, because my husband was traveling a lot. We had no family close by. And I just ran out of everything. It's why this podcast is called MamaFuel, because I ran out of fuel. And so many of us are running out of fuel because we don't allow ourselves to have space and nurture our other interests and water the other parts of our garden. So can you talk a little bit about how you have now come to do other things and nurture other parts of your garden?
Well, the problem with the thing that you talked about is what happens is then, you know, we do that for 5 or 6 years. Then we have an expectation on our children that they're going to give back. Darn it.
Unconsciously, right? It's not conscious. But then you find yourself saying things like, I do all these things for you and you know.
Yeah. And as I like to say, they didn't get that memo when they came in. You know, the memo that said, okay, you're going to have 5 years of everything, and then you're going to need to repay your parents. You're going to need to emotionally take care of them, right? They didn't get that memo.
Right.
Right. They didn't get that memo. They're still expecting us to care for them, and they don't get it when we start going like that. You know, I do so much for you, and they're going, well, I didn't make you do that. I mean, you know.
That's how it is, isn't it?
Yeah, right. And like I tell people, when you wean the baby, they don't go, oh, good for you, mama, for taking care of yourself.
No, they don't.
No, right? They don't. So they're not going to turn around. Like that's what we're waiting for, like permission from them.
Yeah. For
them to say, oh, good for you, Anne, getting a career and doing your life. They're going like, no, where are you? Where's my mama? Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then we get resentful. We get pissed off at them. Don't you get it that I need a life? Don't you get it that I need to take care of myself? No, they don't get it.
And it's not their job to get it either.
No. So I work with mamas. I try to teach them that as you begin to make this move back into yourself, you're going to have to tolerate feelings of feeling selfish, abandoning, rejecting, and unsupportive of your children. Mm-hmm. And they're just feelings, right? But as children, especially women, we were taught what? That it's not okay to be selfish, that it's not okay to be mean, it's not okay to be rude, you must take care of others. And so as soon as we start to turn back toward ourselves, we can get, we can get really nasty, you know, because it's like black or white. It's like, you need to give me space, right? And these little beings, it's not their job to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So I like to say we have to keep an environment where they can keep asking, and we can say, well, of course you want all my time. Of course you want me 24/7. You know this with your daughter. Of course you do. I get it, honey. It feels so good to have mama there. I get it. And the reality is I'm going to be here for the next 30 minutes and then I'm going to go take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we just don't know how to do that as women. I think we either give everything or we get like, you've had enough and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I had to learn like what that bridge is, and the bridge for me was having to tolerate those feelings. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. It's not fun to tolerate.
It's not easy or fun. I confirm it's not easy or fun. Also, as someone who also, read the Alfie Kohn attachment parenting book and thought, this is the way. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to answer and I did. And I wouldn't do it any other way. I wouldn't have let my kids, my choice that worked for me. I wouldn't have let my kids cry out, but that was my choice that worked for me. It exhausted me. Yeah. And there were times when I wished that actually just a little cry would be fine. And, I would let it go, but that was a choice that I made consciously. But the complete abandonment of self and the complete abandonment of interests and getting a few years down the line, and I'm finding this is so common with the mamas I work with, that you get a few years down the line and realize, holy crap, I don't know what I like anymore. Or when someone says to you, what do you do for fun? And your eyes well up with tears because the only answer is, I don't know, because I'm with my kids all the time. Yeah. That's a really big signal that things have gone off kilter, that you are off your center, which is what the whole Centered Mama Project, which is through which I work with moms. Goodness, I'm coming down with a cold and I can tell because my brain and my mouth are just not synced, but that's okay. We're going to go with it because this is real life. And this being knocked off your center because your attention is only flowing in one direction and the giving is only flowing in one direction. It's really harmful to yourself, to your relationship with yourself, and also to your relationship with your kids and their relationship to you and all of it.
I don't, me, I don't see it as harmful because I don't like to think I have that much power. Mm-hmm. There's benefits and drawbacks to it, right? So the benefit for me of abandoning myself and giving myself up is that I got to actually see that wasn't healthy for me. Right? I got to recognize that. Yeah. And I went so far that I got to really begin to reclaim myself. So there was some benefit. Like I say, I was raised by an adult child, by an alcoholic. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't been. Yeah. So there were many drawbacks to being raised by an alcoholic, but there were many benefits because it drove me to know myself deeper. So I like to support mamas and instead of, beating themselves up in any way, maybe look at the benefit now, which is, I adore the work you're doing because the benefit is that when I'm so depleted, maybe I can really look inside and begin to know myself in a new way. And I don't think that happens often until we get to the edge. Till we deplete ourselves, till we get sick sometimes, or till, we're screaming at our children. I think those are just I think in our culture, especially women, because we can have 10 children, go to college, run for politics. We can do so much before our little systems start to signal to us. And I love, again, what you're doing because you're trying to help us understand that earlier. Yeah. But for me, I try to take it out of the harm piece because as mamas, we go to such guilt and shame.
Yes.
We beat ourselves up so much, like we're messing up our children. And, there's benefits and drawbacks to any way that you are. Right. And you're saying, oh, wow, the benefit of maybe feeling that depletion is that a lot of mamas are probably here right now because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get to meet you. They get to meet me. They get to hear stories.
How wonderful is it to meet you? It's so great for everyone, anyone who's listening, to meet you. I would love to know how you have found a way. So 2 questions. One is how you found a way to come back to, as the sole person who was looking after your daughter, and you live in a very special community, and you've chosen to live in that environment to get support for yourself and for her, and to create a family that is different than, everyone living in the same house. But how have you actually found the ways? Like, what are the actual practical things that you did to create space for yourself is my first question. And then the second thing that I'd like to come back to, and I need to say it out loud because with my coming down with the cold brain, I will forget. So if both of us are trying to remember, there is hope, which is this ability to turn the love in instead of having the love only going out, turning the love in, and how you do that. So let's maybe look at the practical side first. How did you actually create space for yourself when you're a single mama raising this incredible force of nature child? How did you practically do that?
I would say that the most important way that I did it was to create separation between my experience and hers. So the more separation that I could experience, then I could have faith that she could manage her experience without me being part of it or engulfing it. So as I began to do that, it started like around 4 or 5. I began to find that my daughter, again, had her own GPS. She has her own knowing. I began to believe that she wanted to keep herself safe and that she wanted to love herself, instead of, often as mothers, we assume our children don't love themselves or don't want to keep themselves safe. That's how we kind of parent, which is kind of a crazy notion, right? Yeah. So the more I could separate out my experience, and I created a process which I've taught you and teach many, called the safe seat process, to actually understand when I was triggered. And again, if some people don't know what a trigger is, an emotional trigger, for me, a simple definition of that is when my daughter would do something and I would have an emotional reaction that was larger than the event itself. Right? Like, let's say she wouldn't put her shoes on and I would just get enraged. Then I would know that I was tracking back into an emotional trigger. And a trigger is something that I had as a young child. And I had a feeling state that was getting evoked, which is that rage or that feeling of powerlessness. And so I started realizing when I was beginning to feel those triggers, if I stayed in an enmeshed relationship and tried to work out my past with my daughter, that I was consumed. And so it required so much more of my time and my energy, because I was always trying to protect her. I was always trying to take care of her. I was always trying to do this. So when I began to separate out, and the safe seat is a process where you actually, when you recognize you're triggered, and I'm happy to offer a link for people to get a free copy of the safe seat, because it's, it's such a good practice,
Thank you. It's such a good practice. So powerful.
So when I felt triggered on a practical level, my personal discipline became, I'm not going to, like a trigger, you could think pulling the gun out, the emotional gun, and I'm not going to shoot my daughter, right? That just became my personal discipline, was that instead of doing this, I was going to go to a safe seat, a safe base, and I chose mine was on my couch, where I can attend to that intense emotion that's arising, which I know has nothing to do with her putting her shoes on. Because it's so much bigger. On another day, she wouldn't put her shoes on and it's fine. Yeah. Right. So you always want to think a trigger is usually like your reaction is so much larger than the event itself. Right. So I began to learn to separate out and go take care of myself in my safe seat and offer such kindness and love to the one that was feeling powerless and helpless and just wanted her to listen or just wanted her to do something. I was like, oh, honey, of course you want this to be easy. And of course you want her to be safe, whatever it is. And then I would help her understand. And the reality is she's 4 years old or she's 5 years old. So the more I learned to separate out and attend to the younger part of me, the enmeshment began to pull apart. And so I had more time and I had more energy for myself. And my daughter, I began to realize could do so many things that I had been doing for her because I thought, I had to. So I would say that's the biggest shift. Today my daughter is 18 and it's like we almost live in separate houses. I mean, in a way, she'll still ask me. She asked me to turn her shower on today, and she'll let me cook for her every now and then. But it just began to separate out her healthy development and my healthy development. But that separation piece is very, very hard to get in our culture. Because as mamas, we're taught we're supposed to connect, right? Especially attachment parenting, it's always about connection.
Yeah.
And if we're not willing, my experience was when I was not willing to own my separation, my daughter created separation with her rage. Because rage is a great way to, get somebody to get out of the way and move apart, right? Yeah. And to get separation. Because who wants to deal with rage, right? I'd rather turn away.
Oh yeah, it's so intense, and this is one that this is what actually brought me to you, and it's something that I haven't really spoken about that much. And it was, and you know this because we've been working together for 6 years at time of recording, and I don't plan on stopping anytime. I always say that I will pay my mortgage, and I will pay for food, and I will pay for Leslie in that order. Because those are the basic needs that our family has. But for me, it was really that, you say, who wants to go to rage? I used to be so proud of saying that I never got mad. I never get angry. And I didn't. I had like delight and happiness and amazingness. And then there was like this neutral part in the middle and then nothing. And I'm looking up, I have a picture of my girls at about this age. They were 2 and 4. And it's right over there on my wall. And I look at how exquisite and perfect and tiny they were. And at that age, rage came into our house, and it was mine. It wasn't actually theirs. And it was terrifying because it manifested as the person who never got angry, using her voice loudly and startling the children. Like the rage hasn't been physical. It has never been punitive. But the kind of surges of rah once in a while were so shocking to me, so terrifying. And I remember coming to you and in such a state of shame and guilt, and just afraid that by telling you that I had yelled at my daughter, that some being would come and take my kids away from me, because how could you possibly yell at these little people? And it's been through this long process of learning to turn towards myself and of going, oh my goodness, wow, you have a really big need. Oh my goodness.
And you're feeling so powerless, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you also get to have some attention. You also can have some time and some energy. And oh my goodness, you're allowed to have needs. And all of this over the course of 6 years. I was going to joke and say I'm a slow steady, but it's just as time evolves and we hopefully evolve as people, and our children evolve because they change so much, right?
Well, I like to say on the 6-year thing, it took you 40 years or whatever, 38 years, 35, whatever you are. Think about all the years that you practiced the other way 1 billion times.
Yeah.
Right? So 6 years is nothing.
That's 40 years.
Right. And I know people hate to hear that, but I tell people it's like, we put that thing on ourselves that says, oh, I got to get this tomorrow, versus dropping the outcome and staying with that kindness toward ourselves. As I always told you, my biggest practice is once you act out, that's the time you got to offer kindness. And most of us offer guilt and shame once we've acted out. Right?
Oh, huge beat up. Masses and masses of beat up. Yeah.
And that just keeps it going. It just keeps the negative loop. So that's the time when you've got to go to the safe seat and say, of course you raged, honey. You were feeling so powerless. You were feeling helpless. You didn't know what to do. You needed some help and you didn't get it. And I'm going to help you because you're the adult. And, we still have to come to our adult self and say, you need to be with your children. But we just have such a, especially in conscious parenting. Yeah. And then we hide it. We all hide out and we get secret. And we don't want anybody to know that at home, behind closed doors, we're raging bitches, And then we just...
Not all the time.
No, but I'm just saying, we think it's all the time. I mean, once you've done it, you start to think, oh my God, that's all who I am. We forget all the other, right?
Yeah. And the shame piece, even just having this conversation with you and evoking it in conversations with others, it has taken a long time for me to, and this is the most public forum I have, this podcast. Anyone can be listening to this. And I hope everyone is, because it's really important to have these conversations, and yet it's still all of these years of work later and all of these shifts that have happened, there is still fear associated with saying those words and saying that there have been times when I've yelled at my kids, and fear of talking about it, shame around having behaved that way, grief for having made those choices, because they're unconscious choices. They're kind of from the dark, dank regions of our experience, things that are coming up to be healed. But we have to talk about them, because so many mamas think that they're alone and that they're the only ones who sometimes lose their marbles over insignificant things. And it's not about the insignificant thing. And that's why I do the work that I do, because if you can stop the hemorrhage of energy and the hemorrhage of time and the hemorrhage of love. And I don't mean that you shouldn't love your children and you shouldn't give them time and energy, but it's such an outpouring constantly that there will come a time when the well will run dry. And it doesn't mean you don't love your kids anymore. It doesn't mean you don't give them time and energy, but it's not the same as when you give yourself permission to go to that jazz class, or you take time to go away with a girlfriend or alone for a weekend, or you say, I'm going to pee in the toilet by myself, and you lock the door.
I have a mama on one of my groups. She said, I just realized that you can get these lock things that kids can't come into the bathroom. She's like, it's the first time I pooped alone in like 3 years.
Right?
It was so cute. It's like, yeah, we all understand.
Yeah.
But, what we're talking about here is balance, right? And so you're talking about, so often when we get into that connection, we get out of balance with our need for separation.
Yeah.
And we get black and white. So then we just say, I'm out of here. And we leave our kids and they're like, again. So, that again, your work is so beautiful in that we just build in practices. Daily practices. And that's what I love. That's like I do on the emotional piece. And I like that you do it more on the physical piece, is that daily practices that just build this reservoir in ourselves. And we come to balance. So when we're raging, we're not in balance.
No.
So we could see it as a beautiful messenger, right? We're just not in balance. So we're feeling way powerless. We're positioning ourselves as victims.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you're raging, you're positioning yourself as a victim of your little 4-year-old. I did. It was crazy. My 4-year-old, had more power than I did because I felt like I was the victim. I was positioning myself that way. Right. So the more that we're able to care for ourselves emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, all of these are areas, work-wise,
creatively.
Right. It's just, and it's going to take time. That's why you have practices. That's why I do what I do, just to offer such tremendous kindness. That we're swimming upstream a little bit as women, because we were trained very early not to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Think about
rewarded for being nice and being patient and being calm and for sharing and for all of these things that actually as adults don't serve us and are part of what puts us on a path to burnout. But at the same time, the conversation that we're having and we're talking about this burnout, it doesn't have to be that way. And not everyone has this experience. And I wrote a piece not too long ago at time of recording where I was saying, to all of those mamas who managed from day dot to keep time and space for themselves, I salute you. And for all of you who in the past I would have judged for being sometimes unavailable for your kids and sometimes selfish with like jagged edges, selfish, not like selfish in the way that I think of it now, which is life-saving. To all of those mamas who were showing me the way and saying, it is okay to exist as a being outside of your children. It is okay to have other interests. It is okay to have a sitter once a week. It is okay to just take space. I mean, you're talking about the safe seat and taking space in the heat of those flashes of emotion. But the actual physical taking of space can reduce the frequency of those flashes of emotion because you are filling up your cup. And it's really hard, in my experience, to fill up my cup when all hell's breaking loose in the house and the girls are fighting with each other and everyone's tired and hungry and it's, it's just been a bit of a day. Those are the moments when it's most important for me to reconnect with myself and to turn the love in. But I got to say, Leslie, it's a heck of a lot easier to reconnect with myself and turn the love in when I'm at the gym sitting in the sauna than it is when Armageddon's happening because someone touched someone else in the backseat of the car. Right?
Well, I like to say the ultimate question that we can ask ourselves, to bring this all into a practical thing that you can do is, what is okay and what is not okay with me about how I treat myself?
Yes. Yes. Tell us about that, please.
Always looking, it's not okay for my kid to yell at me. It's not okay for you to do this. It's not okay for you to do this. They're doing it. Why are you trying to control the external so you feel safe? So the ultimate question is, what's okay with me and what's not okay with me about how I treat myself, how I talk to myself, what I do to myself, how I take care of myself, what's okay and what's not okay with me. That's the ultimate relationship, is this one.
Yeah. Start inside. And that's what the Self-Love-a-thon is about. That's what an exciting program that I'm launching soon, Illuminate, is all about. It's about bringing you back into the spotlight of your life where you belong. Your kids don't belong in the spotlight of your life. That's a lot of pressure. And that's a lot of, as you were saying, a lot of being on them. That is not their role. They have their own spotlight that will let them shine brilliantly and beautifully in their own space. But your job as a mama, my job, is to put ourselves back into the spotlight and come out of the shadows with the grief and the pain and the joys and the hopes and the dreams and all of the beautiful mess that we are, to bring that mess into the spotlight and be like, wow, look at me, I'm here. Wow. And that's enough. And how can I love this beautiful mess? Because we're all beautiful messes.
You bet.
And that's okay. Leslie, I could talk to you for hours, and every week I do. So, because I'm lucky and I know that I can still talk to you, I would love for anyone who's listening and who might want to be able to get in touch with you to be able to do that. So where can people find you online?
You can find me on my website, purejoyparenting.com. And then I have a very active practice page on Facebook. So you could go to Pure Joy Parenting, the fan page, and then they'll lead you. You can join the practice page. And that is just a fabulous place to jump in. We do practices every day. I ask lots of questions. I mean, the mamas are rocking it over there.
Yeah, it is busy up in there. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, really working with their conditioned beliefs and how they treat themselves. So it's just a beautiful way to jump in to start. And then also I lead small groups of 6 to 8 parents, which are great modalities. And then I have a course that I'll be launching again in the summer, Parenting Paused. So.
Oh, and it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful course, and so rich with all of the nurturing and love and experience that you pour into it. 18 years is a long career as a mama.
I got some wisdom.
I got some wisdom, plus all of the inner work that you had done before, all of the inner avoidance, and then all of the inner work and the inner work that you've done as a mama and continue to do. And I really want to say that I'm grateful to you for all of the teachings that you've shared, certainly with me and with my kids, who will often come on, Mommy, I need to talk to Leslie. And they'll come on and say, I have a problem with this at school and I don't know what to do about that. Or sometimes they'll come on and say, Mommy got really upset with me and it wasn't fair because, and these are times that, the kids get with you. And I just really want to acknowledge you for the amazing amount of love and of compassion and patience and wisdom that you share, because our family would not be what it is without your guidance. So I'm eternally grateful to you.
Thank you. I adore your girls. I just want to steal them. That's the problem.
You're not available for stealing, unfortunately.
No, but I keep threatening to, don't I?
But a visit would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could talk for hours, and I really encourage you, if you're listening, to check out Leslie's page. I don't often bring on anyone onto the podcast to promote and talk about what it is that they do professionally, because that's not really the point of this MamaFuel podcast. but I have had so much fuel for my soul and for my aching heart, thanks to the work that I do with Leslie, that I really encourage you to go and seek her out. It's not always easy, but boy, oh boy, it's the best thing I've ever done for our family and for myself.
And I believe personally, because I've been with you so long, that your work has come out of this, right? So, your offerings now, your Illuminate that's coming, and your mama, practices. I mean, it's come out of your experience. So yeah, definitely. Bravo to you.
Thank you. Well, what a lovely note to end on. Leslie, thank you so much. I suspect that we'll be having you on again, and I would look forward to that greatly.
You know where to find me.
I sure do. Every week. Thanks so much, Leslie. Talk soon.
Bye, love.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation, sharing, and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. To join in, go to thecenteredmamaproject.com/Facebook and be sure to say hello when you get there. Can't wait to see you. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little mama fuel, I'd love you to share this episode and to rate and leave a review. Every comment helps, and it's always a delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.